the decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise. For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK.
For generations, the British monarchy has stood on the pillars of tradition and lineage, but those foundations are now shaking. In a stunning twist, King Charles has made an announcement that has left both the palace and the public reeling. Reports confirm that Princes Harry and Andrew have been officially removed from the line of succession, a decision that marks a historic rupture within the royal family. Behind the royal facade, tensions run deep. So, was this about duty, image, or something far more personal? Let's find out. A throne in turmoil. Step into the dim, echoing corridors of Buckingham Palace, where history lingers like perfume and silence carries secrets. Behind the gilded doors and velvet drapes, an invisible storm brews, a clash between the weight of centuries-old duty and the relentless pull of a changing world. The monarchy, once unshakable, now trembles under the pressure of scandal, scrutiny, and survival. What if the crown itself, that glittering emblem of unity and tradition, begins to crack? What happens when royal bloodlines are no longer enough to command reverence or forgiveness? On October 17, 2025, the world paused as Prince Andrew, once one of the Queen's most trusted sons, made a stunning announcement. In what some called an act of humility and others a desperate bid for redemption, he voluntarily surrendered his titles, Duke of York no more. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, and yet amidst the chaos, his eyes told a quieter story, one of regret, exhaustion, and perhaps resignation. But those closest to the palace whispered something darker. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Behind the scenes, insiders spoke of a royal reckoning unlike any in modern history. Buckingham Palace's official website, long a digital monument to royal grandeur, underwent a mysterious transformation overnight. Pages vanished, titles were quietly altered, and the language of majesty seemed subdued. Gone were the ornamental flourishes. In their place, a stark, almost corporate tone emerged. To the untrained eye, it looked like a routine update. But to royal watchers, it was a message, a silent declaration that nothing was untouchable, not even the symbols of sovereignty. And then, of course, there was Prince Harry, the self-exiled son, the rebel, the one who traded duty for freedom under the California sun. Once beloved for his charm and compassion, Harry had become the monarchy's most unpredictable variable. His tell-all memoirs and open criticism had already drawn battle lines within the family. Yet, as the palace restructured from within, a chilling question began to echo through the press and public alike. Would King Charles strike his own son from the line of succession? Some said no. A father could never. Others said yes. A monarch must. In truth, Charles stood at a crossroads no king could envy. His reign, still young, was haunted by ghosts of the past, his mother's towering legacy, his former wife's shadow, and the unending scrutiny of the modern age. Yet, beneath the ceremonial robes and polite smiles, those who know him speak of a man deeply conflicted, torn between love and legacy, between preserving his family and preserving the institution itself. The cracks in the monarchy, once hidden behind polite smiles and rehearsed appearances, are now impossible to ignore. Each royal misstep becomes global news. Each private feud becomes public theater. The world that once adored their pageantry now questions their purpose. The institution that once symbolized stability now fights to prove its relevance in a digital era where transparency, rules, and secrets no longer stay buried. Within palace walls, advisors whisper, courtiers tread carefully, and the once unchallenged aura of divine right feels fragile, human even. One can almost hear the faint ticking of an invisible clock, counting down to an inevitable transformation. And so, as the dust of October's revelation begins to settle, one thing becomes painfully clear. This is not merely a family dispute. It is a battle for the very soul of the British monarchy. Will the House of Windsor emerge renewed, stripped of its excess and strengthened by truth? Or will it crumble under the weight of its own contradictions? its gilded traditions colliding with an unrelenting skeptical age. What unfolds next will determine more than who wears the crown. It will test whether the crown itself still matters. This is not just royal drama, it is a modern Shakespearean tragedy, one of ambition, betrayal, heartbreak, and the eternal struggle between image and integrity. The stage is set, the actors are real, and the world is watching as Buckingham Palace stands on the edge of history once again. While King Charles's announcement still surprises many, what exactly prompted Andrew's voluntary decline from royal duties? Was it pressure or personal guilt? Let's find out. The surrender that shook the palace. Imagine Prince Andrew, once the dashing action man of the Falklands War, the Queen's spirited son who flew helicopters through enemy fire, the golden boy of a bygone royal era. Now, at 65, that same man stands in the twilight of his life, not as a celebrated veteran or adored royal, but as a figure shadowed by scandal and regret. On that crisp morning of October 17th, the palace gates seemed quieter than usual. Inside, a statement was released, short, polite, and explosive. It landed like a grenade in the heart of royal tradition. The continued speculation and accusations are a distraction to the vital work of His Majesty and the royal family, Andrew declared. The words sounded official, almost ceremonial, yet beneath their polished surface lingered a tone of exhaustion and surrender. Surrender. In that single announcement, Prince Andrew let go of titles he had carried for nearly 40 years. Gone was the Duke of York, a title steeped in history, once worn by warriors and kings. It had been gifted to him on his wedding day in 1986, a moment of joy now blurred by controversy. Along with it vanished his other honors, Earl of Inverness, Baron Killyleagh, and even his place as a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, a distinction once symbolizing loyalty to the crown. Most strikingly, his companionship in the Order of the Garter.
On that particular day that we now understand is the date.
That centuries-old Brotherhood of Knights established in 1348 was no more. The question echoing through corridors of power and whispers across breakfast tables was simple. Why now? After years of silence and semi-exile, what prompted this sudden self-stripping of royal dignity? The answer, though familiar, still burns. It winds back to the dark orbit of Jeffrey Epstein, the mysterious financier whose influence reached from Wall Street to Buckingham Palace. Andrew's friendship with Epstein, once shrugged off as unfortunate but harmless, had become the very anchor pulling him down. There were photos of laughter in New York mansions, records of private jet flights, and glimpses of luxury retreats that now felt more like crime scenes. When Virginia Giuffre accused him of sexual abuse when she was just 17, the image of Air Miles Andy turned toxic. He denied it with all the force of a man desperate to protect both name and nation, yet the damage had been done. In 2022, the lawsuit was quietly settled out of court. No admission of guilt, but also no restoration of honor. The stain remained, deep and public. Then came the infamous BBC interview. Sitting stiffly under the studio lights, Andrew tried to explain the unexplainable, his claim that he could not sweat, and his suggestion that a photo might have been doctored, turned the solemn prince into an unwilling subject of global ridicule. Within days, he became a meme, his composure dissected, his credibility shredded. The palace acted swiftly. In 2019, he stepped back from public duties for the foreseeable future. But as months turned to years, his isolation only deepened. Behind the gilded walls of Royal Lodge, his grand but lonely residence in Windsor, the prince who once stood at the Queen's side faded from sight. Now his October statement reads like the final chapter in a long, painful retreat. Publicly, Andrew framed it as an act of duty, to allow His Majesty and the royal family to continue their service without distraction. Privately, many suspect a quiet but firm royal directive. King Charles, determined to preserve the dignity of a modernized monarchy, likely saw no other choice. Today, Prince Andrew lives surrounded by the ghosts of privilege and memory. The medals remain polished, the portraits still hang, but the invitations have stopped coming. In the story of the modern British monarchy, his tale has become both warning and tragedy. Even a prince can fall from grace. A once vibrant war hero has become a cautionary figure, trapped between the echoes of past glory and the unrelenting shadow of scandal. A man who lost not just his titles, but his place in history's good graces. How did the royal palace handle Prince Andrew's submission? Did the palace approve of it? Let's delve into the details of how Prince Andrew's name got changed on the palace website. The digital dagger. Just 2 days later, on October 19th, the quiet storm around the royal family took an unexpected turn. Not through a speech or a ceremony, but through a single, almost invisible act in the digital world. Somewhere behind palace walls, a quiet click was made, and the ripples began to spread. The official Buckingham Palace website, that sleek and carefully managed mirror of royal life, was updated without any public announcement. But those who follow royal affairs closely noticed something strange. Prince Andrew's profile, once proudly displaying the grand title, His Royal Highness the Duke of York, had changed. In its place now stood only Prince Andrew. The Royal Highness, a symbol of birthright and prestige, had vanished. It looked at first glance like a minor change, a digital edit in a corner of the internet. But within hours, whispers started to grow louder. Reports began to circulate that Andrew's name had also been removed from the official line of succession, that sacred list which lays out in precise order who will inherit the throne. To royal watchers, it was like hearing that the family tree itself had been pruned, quietly, efficiently, and without warning. This wasn't a spelling error. It wasn't an accidental update. It felt deliberate. A message written in code, delivered not through royal decrees but through lines of text on a screen. Scandal has no place in the bloodline. In royal history, changing the order of succession has always been a serious and symbolic act, nothing short of a constitutional earthquake. The last time Britain witnessed such an event was in 1936, when King Edward VIII gave up the throne for love, abandoning his crown to marry Wallis Simpson. That decision reshaped the monarchy, placing his brother, King George VI, on the throne and setting the stage for Queen Elizabeth II's long reign. Go back even further, and you find the glorious revolution of 1688, when a king was removed not for love but for religion. Such moments are rare, and they always leave deep marks. So when Andrew's name appeared to be digitally erased, it carried a heavy echo of those past crises. Of course, he hasn't been officially removed as a prince. Doing that would require parliamentary approval, a constitutional process far beyond the reach of a web editor.
You can, on occasions, get extremely lonely and isolated.
But still, the message was clear. King Charles III is drawing firm lines. Insiders whisper that this digital downgrade came after a series of private conversations with the king. They describe Charles as a man balancing two battles, his own health challenges and his mission to streamline the monarchy, to reshape it into something leaner, cleaner, and less weighed down by controversy. Andrew, still shadowed by scandal and exile, simply didn't fit the new vision. Even Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife and his most loyal defender, seemed to sense the shift. In what looked like an act of quiet solidarity or perhaps resignation, she removed Duchess from her social media bio, erasing the last trace of her royal association. For decades, she had been both outsider and insider, tolerated but never fully welcomed back. Now, even her digital identity mirrored the palace's quiet distancing. What happened that day wasn't just a website update, it was a symbolic purge, an erasure that spoke louder than any official statement could. In an era where the monarchy's image is constantly curated and managed, the decision to digitally downgrade Andrew felt like a turning point, a public act of private judgment. The message to the world was unmistakable. The firm is reinventing itself. Under Charles's leadership, the royal family is trimming its branches, reshaping its public image, and shedding any trace of scandal that might threaten its survival in the modern age. But as the pixels settled and the new reality took hold, a question lingered, quiet but haunting. If Prince Andrew, once the Queen's favorite son, can be digitally diminished, erased from the virtual gallery of royal glory, then who might be next? In this new, modern monarchy, where image is power and reputation is currency, loyalty alone may no longer be enough. The royal family is learning to adapt to an age of headlines, hashtags, and public judgment, and to survive, it must decide who belongs in its story and who must quietly fade into the background. Behind the golden gates and ancient traditions, a new kind of revolution is unfolding, one not fought with swords or speeches, but with keystrokes and silence. And as history has shown, the smallest actions can sometimes rewrite the legacy of an empire. What about Prince Harry? Why was his royal status threatened? Was he also involved in a scandal? Let's dive into the details of Harry's transition from spare to outcast. Harry's Highwire Act. Now, shift the lens across the Atlantic, where Prince Harry, the once beloved spare, who became a global sensation, finds himself walking through a storm largely of his own making. Once fifth in line to the throne, safely tucked behind his brother, William and William's 3 children, Harry's place in the royal order once seemed untouchable. But recent palace maneuvers suggest the ground beneath him may be shifting again. Not long after Prince Andrew's startling public statement, royal watchers noticed something subtle yet deeply symbolic on the royal family's official website. Every mention of His Royal Highness quietly disappeared from Harry's profile. What remains is a stripped-down title, simply Prince Harry. But in the intricate language of the monarchy, nothing happens by accident. The timing raised eyebrows. Was this King Charles's way of sending a warning, or was it the quiet beginning of a full and formal erasure from the royal fold? To understand this moment, one must return to the breaking point of 2020, Meg exit. It was the year Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle, walked away from royal duties and fled to California, seeking what they called freedom and peace. The world watched in disbelief as the couple traded palace corridors for sunlit beaches and Hollywood proximity. Yet peace proved elusive. What followed was a cascade of controversies that shook the monarchy's carefully managed image. There was the explosive Oprah Winfrey interview, where the couple spoke of racism within palace walls and the emotional toll of royal life. Then came Spare, Harry's deeply personal memoir, a raw outpouring of long-suppressed emotions, resentment toward his brother, frustration at his father's coldness, and the shadow cast by his mother's tragic death. The Netflix docuseries soon followed, peeling back yet another layer of the royal curtain, exposing cracks in the institution's polished facade. Does he prioritize the bloodline or protect the crown's dignity? The public remains divided. To some, Harry is the betrayer, a man who sold family secrets to the world while profiting from his pain. To others, he's the whistleblower, the only one brave enough to speak the truth about an institution that values silence over sincerity. Harry's life in America paints a picture of reinvention. Through the Invictus Games, he continues to champion wounded veterans, and with the Archewell Foundation, he and Meghan promote mental health and compassion. Yet beneath the surface lies a lingering ache, a sense of displacement and unfinished business. His legal battles over security arrangements when visiting the UK and reports of tense or missed reunions with his family add fuel to the narrative of estrangement. Meanwhile, whispers from palace insiders suggest that Prince William, the heir apparent, may take a firmer stance once he becomes king. Rumors swirl that he plans to redefine the role of non-working royals, potentially stripping titles from those who no longer serve the monarchy's public mission. If true, that could spell the end of Harry's formal status as the Duke of Sussex. More painfully, it might also affect his children, Archie and Lilibet, whose right to use prince and princess could vanish as swiftly as it appeared. In the grand chessboard of monarchy, every move carries consequence. Harry, the boy who once walked behind his mother's coffin with silent grief etched across his face, now stands at a crossroads. His next step could determine whether history remembers him as the lost prince who found freedom, or the royal rebel forever exiled from the house he was born to serve. For now, the Atlantic Ocean separates more than geography. It divides two worlds, one built on centuries of duty and restraint, and the other on individuality and truth-telling. Somewhere between those shores stands Prince Harry, a man torn between past and present, loyalty and liberation. As the palace remains silent and speculation grows louder, one question lingers in the air. Will there ever be a bridge strong enough to span this royal rift, or has it already been burned beyond repair? How did the public react to King Charles's announcement? What made the public furious? Does the loyalty of the public seem threatened? Who were those, and who were against? Let's find out. Echoes of division. The royal family's latest crisis ignited fierce division across Britain and beyond. Once bound by quiet loyalty, the public now debated morality, leadership, and the future of the crown. Many hailed King Charles's decisive stance as courageous reform, an act to preserve the monarchy, not punish family. A YouGov poll showed 62% support for his measures, reflecting a belief that the institution must evolve or fade. Yet Prince Andrew's scandal reopened old wounds, reigniting the hashtag Justice for Victims and public outrage. Across headlines and hashtags, the message was clear: the monarchy's survival depends on accountability, transparency, and the courage to change. Then came Harry, the prodigal son, or the wounded rebel depending on whom you asked. His detractors painted him as a man who wanted sympathy without sacrifice, comfort without duty. They reminded everyone that his estimated $60 million fortune sat uneasily beside his public pleas for understanding. "You can't play both victim and celebrity," sneered one tabloid columnist. To critics, his speeches about healing and freedom rang hollow when delivered from California, mansions, and Hollywood deals. Still, not everyone saw it that way. Royal analysts such as Ingrid Seward applauded Charles's decisiveness. "Credibility is currency in today's world," she said, implying that the king's actions had restored a sense of seriousness to an institution too often mocked for indulgence. Her words echoed through newsrooms and talk shows. The crown, she suggested, was finally behaving like a modern organization, one willing to prune its tree to keep it alive. Yet on the other side of the divide, critics raged. They saw not reform, but revenge, not justice, but jealousy. A younger, more diverse generation of Britons, especially Harry and Meghan's online supporters, viewed the purge as an act of hypocrisy. "This is petty revenge," read a viral TikTok caption over a clip of Harry walking alone in London. Thousands of comments poured in, defending him and accusing the royal establishment of racism and rigidity. To them, Meghan was not a troublemaker but a symbol, the outsider who had dared to challenge centuries of silence and hierarchy. Her supporters celebrated her as an empowered woman who refused to be crushed by protocol. "She built her own brand while they tried to bury her," one American influencer declared. And indeed, Meghan's image seemed to flourish amid the chaos. Her lifestyle projects, charity work, and podcast appearances, painting her as a modern royal, in exile, free and self-made. Meanwhile, historians watched with unease. They warned that what appeared as a family dispute might be the spark of something much larger, a growing disillusionment with monarchy itself. "Fracturing the royal family is like cracking the crown," said a Cambridge professor. "Once people see blood, they start to question the throne." Republican movements across Britain seized the moment. Groups like Republic organized rallies, waving signs that read, "Not my king," and "End the rot."
It happened a few weeks ago, earlier this month, here at our cottage.
They argued that the royal family's internal conflicts only proved their irrelevance in a modern democracy. Even lifelong royalists began to wonder aloud, was tradition worth this much pain? From London pubs to Lagos cafes, from Sydney news panels to Los Angeles lounges, the conversation echoed. Friends argued over dinner, strangers clashed in comment sections, and journalists filled endless airtime with the theories and outrage. The question was simple yet cutting. Is blood thicker than protocol? For some, loyalty to the crown meant discipline, accountability, and public dignity, no matter the cost. For others, loyalty to family meant forgiveness, compassion, and a recognition that behind the jewels were human hearts that bled and broke like any other. The divide wasn't just about the royals anymore. It reflected something deeper, a mirror held up to society's evolving values. People were no longer arguing about crowns and titles, but about privilege, fairness, and the human need for redemption. Could power exist without empathy? Could forgiveness coexist with justice? In living rooms and lecture halls, those questions lingered long after the news cycle moved on, because this wasn't just a royal crisis. It was a reflection of a changing world, one where the lines between legacy and accountability, between blood and principle, had never been so painfully blurred. Since Harry and Andrew have lost their royal titles, some fans have kept wondering, have they lost all privileges? Are they both on the same level? Are they differentiated based on their crimes? Let's delve into the details of the double standards that followed the prince's fall. The price of a title. Prince Andrew's recent decision to relinquish his royal title has sparked a fresh wave of comparisons to Prince Harry's earlier step back from royal duties. Yet one burning question remains: will Andrew, like Harry, also lose the privilege of royal protection? According to royal commentator Christopher Anderson, author of Brothers and Wives, Inside the Private Lives of William, Kate, Harry, and Meghan, the answer appears to be no. Speaking exclusively to Us Weekly on Friday, October 17th, Anderson explained that even though Andrew, 65, has now distanced himself from active royal duties, it appears that he will continue to receive royal protection. This revelation has stirred public debate, with many questioning the fairness and symbolism of the decision. Prince Andrew, once known as the Duke of York, officially stepped back from his royal title amid ongoing controversies linked to his association with the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The scandal has shadowed him for years, clouding his once promising royal career and pushing him further into public disfavor. His choice to surrender the title, though long demanded by critics, marks one of the most dramatic moments in recent royal history, a symbolic fall from grace that still leaves many wondering how far accountability will actually go. Unlike Prince Harry, however, Andrew remains physically and, in some ways, institutionally close to the royal family. He continues to live on the Windsor Great Park Estate, a serene and secure area surrounded by the comforting familiarity of royal grounds. As Anderson notes, this proximity goes with the territory.
We keep up a firm pace because there's so much to do, there are so many opportunities.
Meaning that Andrew's continued protection may be less about personal privilege and more about location, protocol, and the delicate balance of maintaining royal image and safety. Prince Harry's story, by contrast, paints a completely different picture. After stepping away from his role as a senior working royal in 2020, Harry relocated to California, where he now lives with his wife, Meghan Markle, and their two young children, Prince Archie, 6, and Princess Lilibet, 4. Unlike his uncle Andrew, Harry no longer enjoys state-funded protection when he visits the United Kingdom, a decision that has become one of the most contentious aspects of his royal exit. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have spoken openly about their concerns over safety and the struggles of navigating life outside the firm. Harry, who grew up under constant public scrutiny and intense media attention, has expressed deep frustration at the loss of official security for his family. The couple's move to the United States, while offering them freedom and privacy, also placed them in a position of having to personally fund their own protection. A stark contrast to the institutional security that still surrounds Andrew in Windsor. The irony has not gone unnoticed by royal observers and the public alike. While Andrew's reputation has suffered immensely from scandal, his continued protection underlines the complicated structure of royal privilege, one that often blurs the line between duty, birthright, and consequence. Harry, on the other hand, chose to walk away from the monarchy for personal peace and autonomy, yet faces ongoing battles to secure the kind of safety that his disgraced uncle still receives by default. Behind the walls of Windsor, Andrew reportedly leads a quiet withdrawn life, a prince in exile within his own homeland.
Hug and public displays of affection are not something that I do.
His public appearances have grown rare, his engagements non-existent, and yet his royal status, though tarnished, continues to afford him a level of insulation from the harsh realities outside palace gates. In contrast, across the Atlantic, Harry and Meghan have built a life defined by independence and advocacy, speaking out on mental health, humanitarian causes, and family values. Still, the shadow of their royal past follows them, and comparisons like this one, between the exiled prince and the fallen duke, continue to draw public fascination. Both men made choices that changed the monarchy's image forever, one by stepping back voluntarily, the other by being pushed aside by scandal. Yet their stories show that the cost of royal freedom and royal disgrace are not paid equally. In the House of Windsor, titles may fade and duties may end, but the politics of privilege remain as complex and controversial as ever. With the huge announcement from King Charles, what future awaits the monarchy? Will the crown be able to endure the trials of the moment? Let's dig into the details of the future that awaits the monarchy. Shadows of tomorrow. As the royal storm gathers momentum, questions ripple through Britain like whispers beneath the vaulted ceilings of Westminster Abbey. Each new headline adds another echo to the unfolding saga. Will Prince Harry and Meghan Markle finally be stripped of their Sussex titles, becoming not much more than global celebrities, famous but untethered from the crown that once defined them? Could their royal chapter close completely, leaving them as mere figures of public fascination rather than constitutional significance? And then there's Prince Andrew, the once celebrated spare turned scandal's shadow. Will his twilight years be spent in quiet isolation at Royal Lodge, fading into history's background? Or could he face further eviction, symbolic or literal, from the remnants of royal privilege that still protect him? The monarchy, for centuries wrapped in ceremony and silence,
On that particular day that we now understand is the date,
now faces an unprecedented reckoning with transparency and consequence. Amid this, the younger generation, Archie, Lilibet, Beatrice, Eugenie, find themselves in the crossfire of adult decisions and ancient expectations. They are innocent, yet bound by lineage to a family where privacy is impossible and every move becomes public property. Their futures hang in a strange balance. Will they grow up within a modernized monarchy, or will they inherit a fractured legacy defined by tension and divided loyalties? Behind the grandeur and gold-embossed facades, constitutional realities press heavily. To remove royal titles entirely is no small feat. It demands the approval of Parliament, a legal process that could ignite a fresh national conversation about the monarchy's place in modern Britain and across the Commonwealth. In realms like Australia, where Republican sentiments simmer just beneath the surface, such debates could reshape not only the House of Windsor, but the very concept of royalty itself. And at the center of it all stands King Charles III. At 76, carrying the weight of decades spent waiting for this role, he now faces a reign defined by reform and reckoning. Rumors of ill health swirl in hushed tones, yet it is not his body but his legacy that faces its truest test. Is Charles the reformer the monarchy needs? A gardener pruning away dead branches so new growth might bloom? Or is he a father torn between duty and love, forced to sever bonds with his own blood for the sake of the institution he was born to uphold? History offers a haunting chorus of reminders.
Precisely.
Yes. Yeah. And I think having those times together in the summer allows those relationships. I mean, we're a lot more fortunate.
From Edward VIII's abdication for love to the tumults that once toppled monarchies across Europe, the lesson remains clear. The throne, however gilded, is never immune to fragility. The crown's power rests not just on lineage, but on the delicate faith of its people, a faith easily shaken by scandal, secrecy, or sentiment. In this moment, the House of Windsor stands at a crossroads between preservation and progress. Can old wounds be healed, or will pride and tradition deepen the rift until reconciliation becomes impossible? The monarchy has weathered storms before, but seldom one so entangled in modern media global opinion, and private pain laid bare for all to see. The world watches with collective breath held, some with fascination, others with fatigue, as the royal family attempts to steady itself amid the glare of 21st century scrutiny. Every decision, every gesture, every silence carries the weight of symbolism. The institution that has endured wars, divorces, and death must now face the subtler but equally dangerous threat of public indifference. Yet through it all, one truth remains unshakable. Reality often eclipses imagination in the royal sphere. No writer could script such a mix of power, vulnerability, and human frailty. The House of Windsor continues to live out its drama in real time, its joys and crises unfolding before millions, its survival depending on how well it learns to evolve without losing its mystique. And so, the question lingers in the air like incense after a coronation. Will this be the monarchy's rebirth, or its slow unraveling? The stage is set, the players are known, but the ending remains unwritten. One thing, however, is certain. When it comes to royalty, truth will always outshine fiction. So, tell me, what side are you on? Do you think Andrew and Harry deserved such treatments? Could they be pardoned in the future? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.